making, types of decision making, and the conditions under which we take decisions. In part 2, we have gone through details of decision making in the sense behavioral aspect of decision making and rational aspect of decision making, and we have thoroughly developed our clear understanding of which approach, behavioral aspect of decision making or rational aspect of decision making, is suitable in the context of organizational setting. Now today, in this particular lecture, week 13, lecture 25, decision making part 3, we will try to develop our understanding of the concept of common decision making errors or biases and group decision making concepts and the procedures, how we will take decisions in groups. So common decision making biases, what are those biases? What are those errors which we commonly commit those kind of errors? And what are the pros and cons of the decision making, group decision making? And then the procedures which help us to make group decisions effectively. And finally, we will come up with an overview of managerial decision making. So in this way, at the end of this lesson, you all course participants will be able to develop a clear understanding of the concepts of common decision making biases, pros and cons of the group decision making, and the procedure which help managers effectively, and then you will be able to come up with an overall understanding of the decision making, an overview of managerial decision making in the light of the whole concept. Look at what are those common decision making errors. If you see this slide, so there are almost dozens of the errors or the biases which the managers can think about, these all kind of errors and the biases to avoid while making some decisions. The first one is this overconfidence. If a manager in an organization is overconfident, this means that confidence is good, but overconfidence is not good. If you think about this concept, overconfidence is not a good thing. That is a kind of a cognitive biases or an error. When a manager becomes overconfident and does not look at the pros and cons of that alternative, which that manager has selected among other alternatives, so that could create problems for an effective decision making. Secondly, immediate gratification. That particular concept of error in decision making is very serious. For example, if the manager comes up with a sort of his own satisfaction or his own pleasure implications at the later stage, this may give a poor decision making. So that's why this becomes an error in decision making. Another decision making error or bias is anchoring effect. Is the problem with the managers who do a decision about an information that is simply manager, the first-hand information. getting a first-hand information, and just based on that particular information, if the manager is taking a decision, that is an error. That does not prove a good decision making. Another one is selective perception. Selective perception in the mind of a manager is there. If that perception is a selective one, rather than contextually developing a perception, so that could be an error. Another important thing, managers need to look at the concepts like confirmation. If you as a manager come up with a decision with a about an alternative with your confirmation that and that confirmation is not based on a thoroughly evaluation of all possible available alternatives, rather just you confirm one of them, so that could be an error. Next thing is framing something in your mind, coming up with a particular picture rather than looking at all alternatives, reflecting on all those alternatives. So that could be a bias. Availability. For example, while making a decision, if you think this is the available option and we should go with this option, that could be a kind of, you need to be very much serious about that sort of decision. Otherwise, that decision could be a poor decision with these sort of errors and biases. Representation. For example, you can understand if you take decision based on just for the sake of representation of the members or representation of anything in a group or in an organization, including people based on their representation, or just taking a particular decision that shows a kind of not a thoroughly evaluated option to select, rather just for the sake of representation of that particular concept or that particular person to involve in that decision in that particular situation. So that could be another error. Randomness. Most of the situations, people just randomly choose an alternative. So that randomness doesn't give you the desired results. Rather, it could be disastrous in the long run. It could be very good in the long run. So randomness is something, is not an evaluated option. So you need to be very much conscious about these kind of things. Sunk cost. Sunk cost means develop your mind that could that cost has already paid and it is not reversible. It cannot be regained. So that is sort of situation, and based on that, for example, in past you have been a person with an experience that something has lost, something has already spent, and that did not give you that level of satisfaction, and based on that you come up with a decision that could be a sunk cost. Self-serving. If you as a manager focus on a decision that is beneficial at individual level, so that is a kind of self-serving. and that is a cognitive error, cognitive bias. Hindsight is again a kind of something that is at the first sight you come up with in your understanding, and that could create a sort of indication that you have to select this particular option, and that but in the long run they does not outcome. So these are few of the common decision making errors and biases which managers and the people need to reflect critically, need to understand the nature of those common errors, and need to avoid those errors while making decisions. Now come to the next point, that is group decision making techniques. What are those techniques? Why we go for group decision making techniques? The very common group decision making techniques are interacting groups, and that's a very typical groups in which members interact with each other to take a decision, and that is a interacting groups. And this happens in face-to-face situations. People sit together and interact with each other, and they take decisions. Nominal group technique. This is yet a different technique of the group decision making. The difference between the simple interacting groups and nominal group technique is that here in nominal, a group decision making method is used in which individual members meet each other in a face-to-face environment to come up with the judgments that the individuals have, and they collect, they pool, they gather all those judgments in a systematic manner, but in an independent fashion. Independent fashion means here they come up with all those judgments, all those ideas about selecting one best option among so many alternatives. So that is based on individual wisdom, and they come up with all those kind of the things, and at the end they take a decision. So that is the nominal group technique. The third thing is very famous, and that is brainstorming. We mostly use in classrooms and in other situations to develop an idea that makes better sense for the whole group. So an idea generation process that specifically encourages any or all alternatives while withholding any criticism of those alternatives. So that's how you can come up with something meaningful rather than just picking some idea. Electronic meeting in which members interact on computer, allowing for anonymity of the comments and the aggregation of votes. So that's how you can make sense of decision making. So in this particular situation, the person who is commenting, the person who is voting is becoming an anonymous to the people who look at these and their decisions. So who is going to take this, going to give this vote, or who is casting this vote, or who is commenting on this particular situation? So because of this anonymity, so their comments and their aggregation of the votes becomes non-clear, open. Those are the in a kind of hidden one. So that's how you use these kind of group decision-making techniques. So there is an evaluation outcome of these sort of the group decision-making effectiveness. When you look at the types of the groups, we have gone through almost 4 groups. Interacting, that's a very traditional one. Brainstorming, that is yet another we mostly use in the classrooms. A nominal one, which is something similar to interacting, but it has some specific concepts linking with the idea of individual wisdom, and that counts in the group. So that's how. And the final one is the electronic one, where we have just learned about when the people do not show their identity in front of the others, so they come up with this sort of electronic meetings. So when you look at these effectiveness, sort of group decision making is effective and which one is not. So you can these criteria, number and quality of ideas. When you look at interactive, slow, brainstorming high, and electronic it's high. Number and quality of ideas. Social pressure. Similarly, it's high in interactive, social pressure. Is low in brainstorming, and it's again moderate in nominal and low in electronic. Money cost, speed, task orientation, potential for interpersonal conflict, commitment to solution, development of group cohesiveness. These are yet another criteria. When you look at these criteria and use a particular group, either interacting, brainstorming, nominal, or electronic, you can see there are some pros and cons of these different groups to use for decision making, group decision making. So on that, we will be in a position to look at which group has group decision or the team decision making has some sort of advantages and some disadvantages. What are the pros and cons of this group decision making as compared to an individual one-sided the decision making as a manager? So in the next slide, we will look at the pros and cons of group decision making. There are few advantages. The first one is when you engage any sort of group, whatever we have discussed above. So these groups have more decision maker, the manager, to get more information and knowledge. Second advantage is more likely to be generated because there are many minds, there are people in the group, in the team members, so they come up with their own ideas of those alternatives. So you will have a wealth of alternatives to select one among. Third, group decision making is more acceptance of the final decision is likely because there are many one, and you can as a team leader can develop a consensus to select the best one among so many. Enhanced communication of the decision may result because of your interaction in the decision making process. You can enhance the communication level, select one best alternative among others. Better decisions generally emerge. That's a common sense that so many people come up with their ideas, and they discuss on those ideas, and they evaluate each idea of each person in a very critical manner. And as a result, whatever the decisions are taken, those decisions could be generally better decisions as compared to a decision singly takes. there are some disadvantages. One is, the first disadvantage is a very, costly one, because it takes a lot of time. It needs resources to consume, so that's why it's a costly one. And in every situation. Second problem is that you sometimes you are not in a and what not to do, because of because of so many ideas. Everyone tries to influence to select that one which that person thinks is better. So because of that, you compromise the decisions. And another problem with this group decision making is, one person may dominate. If someone is more talkative, more overconfident, like as earlier we talked about, so that person can dominate. So groupthink may occur again. So that's a kind of disadvantage, that groups think is a term that a collective arriving a collective wisdom in this group decision making is a problem. So that may occur. So these are the some of the common problems of the group decision making, advantages and disadvantages. Now we will here focus at is there any particular approach or a process that help us to make decision making, group decision making? Yes, there are some of steps we need to think about, by promoting an effectiveness of the group and the team decision making. So the first one is, be aware of the pros and cons of having a group or team make a decision. So as in the above slide, we have come up with the benefits of and disadvantages of group decision making. So the first process, while you engage with decision making, group decision making, you must know which are the advantages and which are the disadvantages of the group decision making. Second point is, set deadline for when decisions must be made, because it's a costly one, it's a time consuming one, and if you do not set a deadline, you will not reach at a point to take a wise decision. Why? The second important step in this group decision making is to set the deadline when to take the decision. And the third point is that avoid problems with dominance by managing group members. So you, as a team leader, you manage all members so that none of them should dominate in the group. The fourth one is have each member individually and critically evaluate all alternatives. So before going to take a group decision making, so let every member in the group to evaluate all available options. So when the people will evaluate at individual level, at the end they share those evaluations. So you will be in a position who has evaluated which option in an efficient manner. So in this way, you can take a wise decision. Fifth one is, as a manager, do not make your position known too early. So because this is a group, and in the group you take a decision, so let the group members come up with their own decision, and finally you can share your positionality with the group. So for that, the sixth important point is, appoint a group member to be a devil's advocate, a person who presents a counter argument. So for example, if you evaluate a particular option before selecting one best alternative, so there must be someone who will come up with a counter argument, because if you say this is the best option, so there should be someone who could come up with a critique of that one, so the flaws in that one, so that they could discuss it at a
सर आवाज से बंद हो गई सर, आवाज आपकी।
अच्छा, जो लोग हमारे साथ नहीं बैठे हैं उनके लिए ये पैगाम है कि सर डिस्कनेक्ट हुए हैं, तो काशिफ अपना नेट शेयर कर रहे हैं सर से। अच्छा, चलिए। तो सर यूनिवर्सिटी वाला नेट यूज़ कर रहे हैं और हम काशिफ वाला नेट यूज़ कर रहे हैं, इसलिए हम कनेक्टेड हैं। वेलकम बैक सर। हेलो सर, आपकी आवाज़ नहीं आ रही।